Roughly 6 miles away from the largest city in Montana's northwest region, Kalispell, Barbara Paschke was spending her day at home, as she usually did, especially since she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Unbeknownst to her, a black bear was thinking of paying her an unexpected visit. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Barbara Ann Paschke had lived in Montana all of her life. She loved the jaw-dropping views she got every morning from right outside her bedroom window, the fresh air, and, when she was younger, the different mountain activities she could do with her family. But in the past few years, Barbara's health had been declining. In 2009, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a diagnosis that made her incredibly mad. She didn't consume alcohol, she ate extremely healthy, and she was still active despite her age. It didn't make any sense. So to say it came as a shock would be an understatement. Barbara never truly accepted that she had Alzheimer's, but as time passed, her perspective on how to preserve wildlife changed. Barbara's house was nestled somewhere between Batavia and Ashley Lake, approximately 6 miles from the city of Kalispell, right in the heart of the mountains. Her quaint rustic home was surrounded by tall pines and fragrant wildflowers, a haven of peace and solitude. Every day she would wake up to the beautiful song of birds, and from time to time, her yard would be briefly visited by deer or by a bear in search of food. As her disease progressed, she started to feel like the wild animals that would wander around her home were her best friends. So she started to care for them. She put out bird feeders in the backyard, right outside the kitchen window, so she could see tiny, beautiful birds every day. Barbara's relationship with the local wildlife extended beyond the birds. She would often leave out scraps for the deer, and sometimes she would even see a bear lumbering through her yard. However, the way she took care of wildlife wasn't at all legal. A couple of years after her diagnosis, in 2012, Paschke was cited for feeding bears. Montana law prohibits people from feeding bears, which causes them to associate humans with easy food sources and to become aggressive. The penalty for intentionally feeding bears includes up to 6 months in jail and a fine of up to $1,000. However, this didn't stop her. In truth, she probably didn't take it seriously, given how altered her reality was. So she continued to do the same, managing to influence her neighbors as well. Barbara kept her hobby going for 3 more years. As of 2015, her backyard had become a regular feeding place for wildlife. The bears loved the sunflower seeds and millet that she left around her yard. Every day, she felt like she was looking at her own wildlife documentary. It didn't take long for Barbara to choose favorites amongst the bears. She started to develop a fondness for them, which often translated into preparing special dishes. On September 27, 2015, Barbara was at home doing some light chores. She had to wash some dishes and clean up a bit in her living room, nothing that required too much energy. At 85 years old, that was about all she could do. Her day wasn't at all out of the ordinary. She woke up at the same time as usual, filled the bird feeders, and had breakfast. She made herself a cup of tea, looked over at her yard, inspecting every corner in search of animals, and then headed to the living room. Her favorite show was on, so she sat carefully in her armchair and enjoyed her tea. Those tranquil moments were quickly ruined as Barbara heard some sort of commotion happening right outside her backyard door and decided to get up and take a look at what was happening. Usually around that time, bears would come into the yard to eat. She could recognize the regulars, sometimes a female bear and her cubs, other times a male black bear that loved sunflower seeds. As soon as she entered her kitchen, she felt she was being watched. Barbara turned her head to the right, and lo and behold, an almost 4-foot-tall black bear was staring at her. Barbara dropped her cup of tea on the linoleum floor of her kitchen and simply said a soft, "Oh dear," before the bear let out a deafening roar. Her heart skipped a beat when the bear took a step closer. Not knowing what to do, she grabbed the closest thing to her, a pan. Now Barbara had the impression that wild animals were her friends. She thought she could somehow reason with the bear and convince it to leave her. But no one can reason with a wild beast, especially when it's hungry. The black bear swiped its powerful paws across the kitchen counters, throwing everything on the ground. Pots, pans, and utensils clattered to the floor, making a chaotic sound. In the bear's eyes was a mixture of fear and anger. The animal felt trapped, obviously, and didn't know how to react, except with aggression. Despite Barbara's best efforts to back away gradually while holding onto the pan tightly, her feet remained frozen in fear. Sensing her panic, the bear growled once more and charged forward. Almost without thinking, Barbara swung the pan as hard as she could and hit the bear on the muzzle. The blow seemed to infuriate the bear even more as it momentarily retreated and shook its head. Barbara tried to crawl away, but the bear was persistent and her body was not assisting her. Once more, it swiped at her, dragging its claws along her leg. The bear growled at her, flashing its razor-sharp teeth as it opened its jaws. The bear kept snarling and pawing at her body as it continued to maul her. A few minutes later, the bear left the house through the same window it smashed earlier in the evening, but Barbara was alone and couldn't move an inch to ask for help. Luckily for her, a neighbor who would often visit her in the evening heard the 85-year-old's struggles. Barbara was found on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. Her body was trembling from shock and pain. Her neighbor quickly called 911, and Paschke was transferred to the local hospital to receive medical treatment. Unfortunately, the doctor's efforts weren't enough. Barbara's injuries were so extensive that her 85-year-old body couldn't find the strength to carry on. A few days after the attack, on October 1, 2015, Barbara Ann Paschke passed away. The authorities placed bear traps around her home, but only managed to catch a young female black bear weighing 99 pounds and an adult female weighing 162 pounds. Both were euthanized and had been found with substantial amounts of millet and sunflower seeds in their guts, meaning these were some of the bears that Barbara would often feed. Unfortunately, not the bear they were looking for. After some time and no leads, the search was called off. The bears loved the sunflower seeds and millet that she left around her yard. Barbara's case is a great example of humans underestimating wildlife. Despite how beautiful these animals are, we must remember that they are also unpredictable.